Hello everyone, once again my name is Ayush Paldar. Welcome to this new subject for high voltage engineering. It is a departmental elective 702A. It is its code and it is today we are starting with the introductory part of high voltage engineering where we find a definition for high voltage engineering that is given by Indian Electricity Rule 1956. It is one of the codes given the how particularly will maintain every and each equipment or any field of inspection should be considered by only Indian Electricity Rule 1956. They will consider a definition for voltage and as well as define the particularly the mean of volt, that is SI unit for electromotive force, and where voltage is mean by it is a difference of potential between the two conductors having some current I, where he considered the definition of what is mean by low voltage, high voltage, medium voltage, and extra high voltage. Where he defined the high voltage should when a particular apparatus or a conductor carrying across it a voltage of exceed 33,000 volts. It considered the high voltage, and the apparatus or a testing considered above this particular range, they are called high voltage apparatus or high voltage testing equipment, you can say. When we considering about the high voltage engineering, it is basically a science of planning and operating where we test this high voltage equipment and we design insulations for as we see this particular apparatus are work on high voltage, and the force along this two conductors or two particular part is so much high that if does not control this particular voltage act as a short circuiting. Reliable insulation should be a considerable property where we use gas insulation, liquid insulations, and basically solid insulations also. Here we get some introductory part of how what is mean by high voltage engineering and definition. Now continue regarding the this particular high voltage engineering. It is basically in modern times we have to be test each and every equipment and its insulations also. In the current scenario, we will test by 6 megawatt and various equipment are using this sound lab. I will introduce in regarding in continued PPTs also. The principal medium for this insulation in the extra high voltage mediums or high voltage engineering, the gaseous, vacuum or solid liquid are in there, like SF6 circuit breaker having it is a gaseous mediums for insulating between the two arcing processes. Okay, it is a one of the application of high voltage engineering where the large hadron collider, it is a sun required a very high voltage of equipment like the for giving the god particles from this particular very large hadron collider. So it required very high voltages, and the equipment and the insulation should be so much good for this particular test circuitry. It is under the high voltage engineering and its particular science also. As we see this particular given scenario where we have binding of 220 kV transformer having the insulations of might be your solid insulation most of probably, because it will be transferable to a yard also, substation yard also. It might be considering that some of the tests like 10 delta test or at a mega test will be performing this particular insulation to consider that if a high voltage should be applied in each and every day. Okay, the insulation does not be failure. If insulation will be failure, there is short internal short circuiting in this particular transformer, and it will causes the abruption of electrical failure in whole particular supply. Okay, so high voltage equipment testing should be considered. It also considered during a particularly high voltage transmission line, mostly in electrical scenario it is 750 kilowatt. Okay, like insulations failures are should be there. So SF6 insulating switchgear system I will consider also. It is one of the gases insulating material also where we require the particularly switching on of our circuit breakers. Okay, next it is a one of the CTs and PTs are should be there as a high voltage equipment. It is a metal oxide arrestor. Arrestor is basically a device which will use to arrest the high lightnings. Okay, so that it does not be damage our transformers. Okay, it is a one of the testing transformers. It is mainly in India. It is used by the BHEL, and other it is one of the campaigning diagrams of one of the Chinese lab. Okay, It is another impulse voltage generator. Is a very I will tell you in this particular classes also. Impulse generator is used when we require the voltage, a very high voltage of around 33,000 volt in a millisecond. It is T to tower in a very approximate millisecond. You require a very high voltage. This type of impulse voltage generators are being built there. It will be first tested by the Tesla. Okay. Now, talking about the main content of this particular course, as I will regarding and certainly saying about the high voltage engineering, this particularly all content is related to electrical insulations. How this particular electrical insulations are been there. So we will talking about higher level insulation should be there. So insulation we are talking about first part is insulation in this particular whole course. Second, how this particular insulations are being tested, how the this particular voltage of high voltage should be generated and measured using devices. So we're talking about the high voltage testing and techniques. And this high voltage techniques are given on the over voltage system. So it is tested using the power system insulation also been tested. So we'll require three theory part: insulation, high voltage technique, and over voltage are being discussed in this particular further scenario. Where have we having the unit 1 containing the breakdown in gases mechanism, and basically it is a breakdown in non-uniform field also in unit 1. Unit 2 contain the breakdown in liquid and solid mechanisms. We will require different type of mechanisms, how the insulation material failure in solid and liquid can be contaminated by different relations. So third part containing the impulse generator, how the high voltage should be generated and it test. And fourth unit, measurement of high voltage. If there is a high voltage should be there, how should we will test in this particular scenario? It continue by the unit 5 also using the resistance of cables. Okay, now these are the reference book. One of the reference book we will use in this particular course. First book is CL Vadva, second is LV Belvi from traveling amount transmission system, MS Naidu and V Kamaraju, and DV Razvis and Kufal Zinc from high voltage. These are the one of the reference book you will be used. Now for a hardware part also in the particular in particular college, we will use high voltage engineering by Silva first, and we use MS Naidu and Kamaraj. One of the textbook that you will consider that will be giving you the some of the good knowledges for this particular course also. Okay, now talking about, we will continue this particular topic and talk you about the mechanism of breakdown of the gases. As you know, this the gases are basically simplest commonly used as a insulator purpose, as they will form a common dielectric. As we apply a voltage across it, it provided some potential across it. And as we know, what is the main difference between the insulator and dielectric mediums? Insulator is what that does not allow the current passing through it, where dielectric medium are those that does not pass the current through it, but also they provide some potential across it. That is the main difference between that. It dielectric medium provides some potential across it, but insulator provide the opposition only. So one of the this dielectric mediums used in our insulating medium as a gases are nitrogen, carbon, furan, and SF6 gases. Mainly these gases are being used for high voltage engineering purposes, where breakdown voltage is a basic terminology. It is used when of the maximum voltage that a insulating can be carried before its breakdown. It is called breakdown voltages, and this particular breakdown is a very bigger term in the high voltage engineering, where the ionization process should be start. What is mean by ionization? Let us assume a electron atom should be there. When we apply a high voltage across the two end of a conductor, this particular voltage across a conductor carrying a force, electrostatic force across this particular conductor gate, it will pushes atom to get some electron from it and ionize the particular atom as a positive ion. Okay, and this particular re-extraction of electron from one atom to another, and this particular electron that carries some electrostatic force from the outside external forces, put the another atom to exert another electron from this particular particular part is called ionization. And this carry the different type of ionization process, like photoionization process, thermoionization process should be there. We will continue in this particular lecture series also. Okay, one other process that we call the ionization process. That means it is a process of liberation and electron from gaseous molecule with simultaneous production of positive ion. As we say, when an electron will be liberated from an atom, it will act as a positive ion. So it is a process of ionization. It is a one of the process of ionization we will carry. It's called Townsend discharge theory method. As you see in diagram, where you having a adjustable source in this diagram, we will provide a negative source to the cathode and positive to the anode. A high voltage force of electrons will be carried from cathode to anode side. This particularly two plates, when we get the cathode plate, and one is the anode plate. In both of them there is a dielectric gas. Okay, we will, it is a f6, and let us assume if the some high voltage should be applied, some of the electrons should be moving from a cathode to anode and getting to the positive side of the part. Now let us assume if we put a UV light, that will carry the high energy radiation. If this UV lights are put on the this particularly dielectric medium, gaseous medium, what will cause? It will cause that, let us assume there will be hundred of atoms are being transferred from cathode to anode side. 100 electrons are being transferred from cathode to anode side. If we provide some UV light in this particularly insulating medium, some 10 extra electrons are being provided from cathode to anode side. So what will be the conclusion? That the conclusion is that if we provide a UV rays, extra rays on the insulating material, the input of the electron from the negative side should be 100, and from the positive side the number of electron get should be 110. It means be extra electron we will providing in this particular scenario. Okay, it is called ionization by collision method. Okay, where a few extra electrons are been there from a cathode to anode side. Okay, this additional electron make this called ionization collision methods. Okay, and this method can be liberated by one of the more electron to electrons, and it will provided more energy to you. Thank you so much. Until this particular lecture, we will continue this ionization process by different method like photoionization and thermal ionization and different Townsend methods and Pascal method in the next continuing lecture. Thank you so much for this lecture.